Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Joe the Lawyer. Today we're going to take a look at an article from CNBC entitled, "Here are the largest public companies taking payroll loans meant for small businesses." Now, I usually try not to get too political on my shows and my channels, but sometimes it's unavoidable. So what we're talking about here today in this article is the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. I want to go over exactly how the first round of funding for the PPP, which was meant to help small businesses, was distributed. The reason you're seeing this on a show called Joe the Lawyer is because I am a small business. My law practice is actually an LLC. This affects attorneys of all kinds. So I want to take a look at this. Maybe you guys can learn something. I can point out some of the flaws and inequities in the system, and we can see what's going to happen next. So thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pometto, Joe the Lawyer. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Really trying to get subscriptions right now. I'm trying to get to 1,000, so if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Another free way to help me out is to share this video. Share it with anybody you think who would be interested in it in social media, in a Facebook message, or in a text message. I would truly appreciate it. So this article was published yesterday. Let's look at the key points here. Hundreds of $millions of Paycheck Protection Program funds have been claimed by large publicly traded companies. So, the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, is part of the CARES Act. The CARES Act was passed, I guess it's been about 3 weeks now, by Congress and the federal government as the coronavirus stimulus/relief package. There's a whole bunch of stuff that was in that act, including the stimulus checks that went out to everybody who was making under $100,000 and some people who were making more depending on their family size. So this relief went out to governments, small businesses, big businesses, etc. Well, what we were told was that this particular program, the PPP, which is part of the CARES Act, was a loan to target small businesses. The purpose of it was so that small businesses could get this money and continue to pay their workers, hence the word Paycheck Protection Program, so that while the economy is shut down and even when it gets started, these companies would be able to hire their workers back or continue to pay their workers. As I'm sure you've seen, hundreds and hundreds of companies have furloughed their workers. There'll be more on that in a second. The second point is, in fact, the United States government has allocated at least $243.4 million of the total $349 billion to publicly traded companies, according to Morgan Stanley. Next bullet point, several of the companies have market values well in excess of $100 million, including DMC Global, Wave Life Sciences, and Fiesta Restaurant Group. Okay, and as we scroll down here and we look at these PPP loans to public companies, you can see there DMC Global, $6.7 million, Wave Life Sciences, $7.2 million, Legacy Housing, $6.5 million. I haven't heard of a lot of these, but they are large publicly traded companies. A publicly traded company is any company that has shareholders and is traded on traded on a stock exchange. All right. Publicly traded. If you are a publicly traded company, it means the company is huge. You can see the numbers here for market capitalization: 74 million, 72 million. There are some smaller ones on there: 7 million, 6 million. But no business on any publicly traded company is going to be worth millions and millions of dollars. All right. I saw a statistic fairly recently that said, I believe 50% of people in the country are hired by small businesses. These are not small businesses. These are massive businesses. And what they've done is taken advantage of sometimes the loopholes in the PPP. So I believe one of the things they can do is if it's one giant business or corporation and they've broken that corporation down into smaller franchises, because the PPP requires you have less than 500 employees. Well, if these companies can break down their franchises or their locations or portions of their company so that it looks like they have less than 500 employees, they're eligible for the PPP, and that's exactly what happened. Hundreds of millions of dollars of Paycheck Protection Program emergency funding has been claimed by large, publicly traded companies, new research published by Morgan Stanley shows. In fact, the United States government has allocated at least $243 million of the total $349 billion to publicly traded companies. The PPP was designed to help the nation's smallest mom-and-pop shops keep employees on payroll and prevent mass layoffs across the country amid the coronavirus pandemic. But the research shows that several of the companies that have received aid have market values well in excess of $100 million, including DMC Global, $405 million. That's almost $500 million. Wave Life Sciences, $286 million, and Fiesta Restaurant Group, $189 million. Fiesta, which employs more than 10,000 people, according to its last reported annual number, received a PPP loan of $10 million. At least 75 companies that have received the aid were publicly traded and received a combined $300 million in low-interest taxpayer-backed loans. I think you've seen some pretty shameful acts by some large companies to take advantage of the system, said Howard Schultz, former Starbucks chairman and CEO. Instead, the government should act as a backstop for the banks to give every small business and every independent restaurant a bridge to the vaccine. And that is the money and the resources to make it through. Statistics released by the SBA last week showed that 4,400 of the approved loans exceeded $5 million. The size of the typical loan was $206,000, according to the SBA. The SBA awarded the plurality of PPP dollars to the construction industry. Professional, scientific, and technical services received 12%, manufacturing about 12%, healthcare 11%, and accommodation and food services about 9%. And the construction industry number was 13%. Congress approved the first come, first serve. There's our first problem. PPP in March as part of the massive $2.2 trillion CARES Act, which at the time promised to ease some of the financial burden for many of the nation's smallest business owners. But the program ran out of money on Thursday when the SBA announced it was unable to accept new applications for the program based on available appropriations funding. Nation's top lawmakers have in recent weeks worked to expand the funding. Staffers for Chuck Schumer and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi have been in talks with Treasury on drafting another bill which appeared nearly finished by Monday evening. Schumer said Tuesday he believes the chamber will pass an additional relief bill for small business later in the day. And I believe that's correct. The relief bill has been passed. He told CNN he spoke well past midnight with Pelosi. By Sunday, deliberations between Democrats and Republicans setting aside $310 billion more into the PPP. They're going to send some money to rural and minority groups and money to the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Okay, but a couple key points that I want to get in here, and that goes back here to, let's see. What was that I quoted? First come, first serve. Okay, so that was the first problem with the PPP, is it was set up on a first come, first serve basis. So I believe it went active on a Monday. Now, when something like this goes active, who is going to be in the best position to get an application in as quickly as possible? I filled out one of the applications. It wasn't that hard, but it requires significant paperwork. All right, the companies that are going to be able to get those applications in quickly are companies like these publicly traded companies. That's because they have accountants, they have lawyers, they have entire teams that they can set aside just to get the application done and in as soon as possible. So that's the first advantage of the large companies. And as you saw here, it was set up as a first come, first serve. So this thing goes live on a Monday, all right, and the larger companies, boom, 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 they're all, these 70 public traded companies, they probably have their application in within hours. The week before, they were probably preparing the paperwork. They have whole teams likely dedicated to getting an application in for the PPP. Meanwhile, imagine yourself, because I'm an attorney and I'm fairly savvy on the internet, it still took me a couple of days to get my application in, all right? Apparently it was too late. Imagine, an older, there's up the street from me, there's a hardware store that's probably been there for 85 years, and it's run by a gentleman who's probably in his 70s. He's probably hurting really badly right now, needs PPP funds. He can't get an online application in like this in one day. It might take him weeks. He may have to hire someone to help him or get his grandson to come over and fill out the application. So this first come, first serve nonsense helps the larger companies over the smaller companies. Again, this bill was meant to help smaller companies. So the larger companies, boom, have an advantage right off the bat. On top of that, what this article doesn't talk about, but what I've observed in the PPP is larger banks, the banks. So the money was distributed to the banks by the Small Business Administration, and then the banks took applications on their own. Now, if you're a big bank, whose application, or even if you're a small bank, whose application are you going to process first? You bet your bigger clients, your clients who have the larger accounts. Who's going to have the larger accounts? The larger businesses. So that's the second part of this PPP, okay? Without any rules as to how the money is distributed, these banks could go about and say, oh, we're going to help this company and that company. This company has $5 million in their account, da-da-da-da-da. Then you got, a small mom and pop hardware shop that has maybe $5,000 in the account. Okay, they're going to be much further down the list. So I think I think the PPP is a good thing. I think the PPP needed to be passed to help people out, help small businesses out during this coronavirus shutdown. But I think that it has only served to it's also been, let's see, a representation of inequality, because number one, it allows these large public companies, and I'm telling, a lot of them took advantage of loopholes where they have individual franchises with less than 500 employees. Okay, a lot of them took advantage of loopholes to apply, had an advantage in applying faster because it's first come, first serve, and then the banks treat them first because they have the larger accounts. So this thing turns into a type of plan that helps the companies that don't need it the most. And I'm not saying those companies don't need the money, but it's the real small companies that really, truly need the money. To highlight that, here in Pittsburgh, there's a hot dog shop called The Original in the college town of Oakland, all right, where the University of Pittsburgh is. The Original has been there for as long as I know. It's famous all over Pittsburgh. They sell hot dogs and fries, and the coronavirus has caused that business to shut down. Now, maybe they would have shut down anyway. I don't know if they applied for a PPP, but we are going to see lots of restaurants, lots of small businesses are never going to come back. They're gone. And I believe if the government acted faster on this bill, got this bill to the people who needed it quicker, a lot of the damage done by the coronavirus could have been prevented. And I'm not saying that that's an easy task, but I am upset that the government did not do a better job on this, and we need to be ready next time. There's some more money being injected into the PPP now. It's going to be distributed in the same way. I'm sure more small businesses will get it now because the large businesses already took all their money, but it will still be distributed in an unequal manner. So I just wanted to give my opinion on this, the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. I hope everybody out there is doing okay. And, like I applied for this, I haven't received the money yet. And I think part of that is because my bank was prioritizing the larger businesses, the bigger accounts, their larger clients. You almost can't blame them, right? That's human nature, but the government should have done something to regulate that. Mark Cuban said that the money should have been distributed by a lottery. I think that would have been a good idea, something to make the distribution more fair. fair. Okay, thank you everyone for joining the Joe. This is Joe the lawyer. I got my other show. Thank you for tuning in. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. I'd really appreciate if you share this video. Maybe someone you know is dealing with the PPP. This will give them some information on it. Let them know maybe why they didn't get it. That's the best way to support this show, which will always remain free. So I appreciate you helping me out. Thank you very much.